welcome to episode 20 of Plat'n. Today we have Shuriken Sauce, who has, and I've taken a sneak peek, an absolute banger of an account with a lot of fighting games, which is a style of game that I'm not particularly well versed in, but I've done my research for you, buddy, so hopefully I can get most of these correct. The first trophy was in Call of Duty Ghosts, with the first Platinum also being Call of Duty Ghosts about 9 years ago. So we've got 86 Platinums in 9 years, which is very impressive, but this account is very much quality over quantity, as you will see when we jump into it. Now, before we get in, of course, if you would like your own list looked at, do leave it in the comments below or join the Platinum Standard, which is a Discord of trophy hunters for trophy hunters, made by trophy hunters. It's a good place. We've got a lot of people in there now. It is growing very quickly. So if you'd like to talk to my beautiful face off of videos, that's the place to do it. Anyway, let's jump in. Alrighty, and we're starting off Shuriken Sauce's list with, of course, the classic 36 Fragments of Midnight. We all know it. It's a relatively easy peasy. It's quick, it's harmless. They smashed it out in 2 hours and 57 minutes. We then have Adam's Ventures Origins, which is kind of like the no-name label version of Uncharted. You're essentially a dude going into tombs and stuff like that to get treasures and all that fun stuff. Anthem is our next 100% hit. You will notice we do have a lot of 100% and a lot of completions, as well as a lot of ultra rare trophies, which we're going to see some impressive ones coming up. Anthem is here, which in my opinion is actually a fairly impressive one to have, just because of how awful that game is, how time consuming compared to how dead it is. But yeah, you smashed it out in a month and 6 hours. It was sort of BioWare's not answer to Destiny, but their big sort of live games as a service sort of idea. You were kind of essentially just Iron Man in an open world of sorts. It's hard to explain. It didn't do particularly well, and that's why Anthem died very quickly. Arcania 3, Love Max. I'm not entirely sure what this one is. I'm gonna say 2D fighter, because we do have a lot of 2D fighters on this list, but it is a 1.58% completion for a juicy ultra rare there, which is very impressive. Ark Survival Evolved 100% in 2 months as well. That really says to me that you didn't use the debug menu, which is super impressive because the game does not run particularly great on console. So to say that you did it legit in that 2 months is very impressive, especially the DLC where you've got to collect, like, I think it's 800 collectibles, which is a lot. I started on that and was not having a fun time, so I put that down, and maybe one day I'll get back to it, probably not. We then have Art of Fighting Anthology. Now I believe this is the 2D fighter, side-scrolling beat 'em up sort of thing. I believe there's 3 games in the anthology, right? And I think they're all from like the PS1 era, PS2, roughly. Very impressive ultra rare platinum there at a 4.84%. And the fact that you smashed it out in less than a week is also really nice to see. We then have Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the only Assassin's Creed on the list. It hurts my soul. It hurts my soul, but it is one of the best ones to have. And you actually cleaned that up very recently in November 2021 after a good 7-year burst there. So I'm guessing this was one of your early games on the account, much the same way that Call of Duty Ghosts was, perhaps. We then have Astro's Playroom, built-in little charming platformer that is in every single PS5 when you buy one for free. It's very fun. It's very enjoyable. You smashed it out in just under a day. We then have Atari's Flashback Classics Volume 1 and Volume 2 both here. I do know they're both sub 1% platinums, which is always something that you adore to see. But I do know you can save scum them, I believe, which, I mean, you consider they're still insanely difficult even with that. But I do know that you can save scum before deaths or something. Good friend of mine in the Platinum Standard Discord, Dorothy, went for this these 2 platinums very recently. We then have Batman Telltale Series, which is a Telltale game. You're just going through cutscenes, you're just interacting, all that fun stuff. I think, yeah, this one was free with PS Plus in around sort of 2018-ish from memory. You obviously did it a couple of years after that. And I'd be interested to see what you think. I am noticing that you don't have the enemy within, which signals to me that you maybe didn't enjoy it as much. I certainly didn't, but they're not. Telltale games aren't my real cup of tea. Next up, we have Battle Fantasia, which is another fighting game. I believe this one's made by 505. Another sub 1% ultra rare, which is, you know, I love to see them. So this is an amazing one here. And again, under a week. That is scary good. I'm a big fan of what I'm seeing. We then have BioShock Infinite. The only BioShock on the list is the worst one. Hurts my soul a little bit, but I would definitely be interested to see what you thought of the arena-based DLC, and was that what put you off doing the others, perhaps? I do think BioShock was free on Plus at some point, but I'm not entirely sure when, because I think I already owned it by that point, so it's probably like 2019, 2020, somewhere around there. It's obviously the last one in the trilogy. Instead of being under the sea, you're up in the sky, and it's average at best, in my opinion. We then have Bloodborne's 100%. Love to see that. Smashed out in 2 weeks and 5 days. I would love a Bloodborne 2 at some point, or just even just a remaster in 60 frames would be amazing. Come on, let's get on that. Let's get on that, shall we? We then have some Borderlands here with Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3, and the pre-sequel all at 100%, which is amazing to see, especially the pre-sequel. It's not as good as the other games, but it definitely doesn't deserve some of the hate that it absolutely gets. It being on the moon, Borderlands 3 being a multitude of planets, and Borderlands 2 being entirely on Pandora. 2 being probably the most popular of them. 3 having the most insufferable characters, but pretty fun gameplay. Really bad DLC practices though. So there's 2 season passes. 1 season pass has most of the content on it, and then the other one has 2 very money hungry DLCs, and I haven't done those yet for that very reason. We then have Bound, which is of course a sub 1% platinum as well. You'd love to see it. Brawlout is here again, another sub 1%. This is going to become a recurring theme, and I'm all here for it. We then have Brawlout, which is another. I believe this one's more of a party-based beat 'em up from memory. We then have Call of Duty Cold. Ooh, I like this. I like this Call of Duty collection here. It's not big, but it's quality. We have Cold War's 100%, which anyone who hasn't watched that video, get onto it. It's an experience. My platinum journey in Call of Duty Cold War. We then have Ghost, which is one that myself and my good friend Bruce are planning on doing very, very soon. So Shoryuken, if you have any tips for us, do let me know. And then one of my personal favorites and one of my most enjoyable experiences trophy hunting in Call of Duty World War II. We got the full 100% for all 3. I adore to see that. Absolutely adore it. Wow. I would be interested, are you planning on doing any of the other CODs? I would say, judging by your list, I would say one of the best ones for you would be Infinite Warfare. Infinite Warfare and Advanced Warfare would probably be the most interesting to see you go for, in my opinion at least. We then have Conan Exiles at 100%. It hurts me that you had to go back and get that DLC. The game was obviously free on Plus years ago now, and then they randomly released DLC last year. I think it was July of last year when you've gone in and cleaned this up, which hurts. This is obviously a big MMO based on the Conan world. I think you could build bases and stuff. It was somewhat similar to Ark Survival Evolved, only worse. We then have Dead or Alive Round 5, which is another fighting game. Destiny 1 and 2 both here, very, very impressive. First-person shooter MMOs, very similar sort of gameplay, looter shooters to things like Borderlands, made by the guys who made Halo. Peter Dinklage is the little robot that then I think immediately got replaced because he did such a bad job voice acting it. That's always funny to think of. I know for a while Destiny 2 was labeled by PSNP Plus as unobtainable. It looks like that has been rectified maybe in the latest expansion or something like that. Do let me know in the comments maybe what that was about, but it is nice to see the 100% for both of these. I think it might have been they removed a planet that was needed for a trophy and then maybe changed the description or something. We then have Detroit Become Human. I think we see this one every single week. David Cage wasn't a big fan of it. A lot of magazines to collect. We then have Don't Starve, which is a really good one to see there, especially with the 100%. 100% without a plat don't get enough love. And this one right here for a 0.57% is very, very impressive. We then have Downwell, which the name speaks for itself. You go down a well, you see how far you can get. I think this was Missing Collectibles' first ever video. It's also a cheeky ultra rare at 2.14%, which is amazing to see there. You actually did it very quickly. Wow, I did not know you could do it that fast. 2 hours and 17 minutes is... I might need to look into that myself at some point. That is a juicy ultra rare for the amount of time there. Ooh. Yeah, that's a nice one to see. We then have Dragon Ball FighterZ, fighter in the Dragon Ball universe. We've got Erica, which is like a movie horror game of sorts, I guess. I think technically you could do that for the Spooky ABC comp, so people taking notes. Fantasy Strike is a side is it 2D? I assume it's 2D fighting game, much the same way as stuff like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. This one, however, is a very rare 0.63% platinum. We've got a couple Final Fantasies here with 7 Remake or Demake, if you ask me, and Final Fantasy 15, which is a very impressive one because Comrades is now technically unobtainable. You can't traditionally access it through the base game. You've got to use the standalone these days. But what you can do to still obtain this is you can use software to back patch, I guess you would call it, or take it back to a patch that supports going through the main game to get to Comrades, and you can still earn the trophies that way. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it is doable. We then have Telltale's Game of Thrones, which is the second Telltale game of the list. Another one we see every week, bar like my own account. I really need to do that one. I've done the Platinum previously, but because I think this was free on Plus, was it not? But it's okay. I'm not the biggest Telltale person. I sort of, my brain shuts down when a conversation goes for more than 2 minutes. So when the entire game is based around those, I'm in trouble. But the Game of Thrones one was interesting. It is a shame that they didn't make a sequel. Some of the stuff they were building up to was interesting, but I don't know. I just found the time period that they set it in a little bit boring. And also there's just that amazing like Dragon Age clone Game of Thrones game that just deserves so much more love. We then have Goat Simulators 100%. Kudos to Flappy Goat is always a very nice one to see. Every now and then I fire up Goat Simulator, see if I can get the trophy, and I'm very disappointed when I can't. The DLC, however, is amazing. Things like the zombie apocalypse and all that is a load of fun in that game. We then have 2018's God of War. Do let me know, Shoryuken, if you are very, very keen for Ragnarok or not. Personally, I'm actually kind of just... I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not that hyped, which is interesting. I preferred the old style of gameplay in the God of Wars. I like the beat-em-up style over the really slow, drawn-out Last of Us sort of theme that the God of War 2018 went for. But I still am excited myself, and I'd be interested to hear your opinions on it coming up. You've got Horizon Zero Dawn, open world, very sort of Ubisoft-y inspired open world there. It's a shame they never made a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. Immortals Phoenix Rising, another Ubisoft, well, this one's actually made by Ubisoft, but this is essentially take Assassin's Creed, get a little dash of Zelda Breath of the Wild, make the puzzles obnoxious, then add some really awful DLCs, and you have Immortals Phoenix Rising. I do think that the way the narration is done in this game is fantastic. Every other aspect of that game was a slog, especially the DLCs. There was 2 of them from memory that were really bad. One of them was a New God, which was just a lot of puzzles where you could work out pretty quickly what you needed to do to proceed, and then you just had to fight the mechanics to actually achieve that. And it was something. It was something. And then the other one was the like Hades inspired top-down semi-roguelike DLC that was just sort of, why do we need to do that? We then have Injustice Gods Among Us, which 0.17, and it is 0.17 for a reason. That is amazing, Shuriken Sauce. If I was wearing it, hold on, headphones off to you. Headphones off to you. It's the closest thing I've got to a hat, but that is a seriously impressive Platinum right there, and I'd love to see that. We then follow that up with Jump Force, which is another ultra rare. At this point, I'm just thinking, you're part of this elusive ultra rare club, aren't you? You're one of the members. You're one of the members. You've all got like a coin. How do I get in the club? It's you, Vigilant Crow, Rainer. I want in. But we then have, what else do we have? We've got Knowledge is Power, which is a quiz game, essentially. I think you use a load of mobile phones, much the same way you could do with like Among Us and stuff. I think this was another one that was on Plus, and it's one that I've looked at in the past, because like I said, it's like a trivia game, essentially. And it's one I've looked at in the past as maybe one that I'll do myself, because it is a nice ultra rare right there, but it's also a trivia game, and those are always very, very fun. We then have Lara Croft Go, which is the tile-based sort of puzzle game based on Lara Croft, or Tomb Raider in general, but I believe from memory you slide around the characters on like tiles. There's also a Hitman one of the exact same premise. So I'm surprised I didn't make more of these, because these were released around like 2016-ish. I do remember these when I sort of first started to get into trophy hunting myself. We then have Lumo in, Lumo in 3 days and 5 hours is another really, really impressive one at 0.78%. Juicy ultra rare. We then have Magica 2, which is another ultra rare, and another one you smashed out very, very quickly in 6 days. I'm talking about smashing these out quickly. And then we follow that with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite in less than a day. We have this at 8 hours and 44 minutes for a 1.24% Platinum trophy, which is insane. That is actually pretty crazy. Shuriken Sauce, this is a very, very impressive account. And chef's kiss. But we then have a couple Spider-Man games with Spider-Man and Miles Morales. Of course, very, very good games. I will say, personally, I think the original Spider-Man there, its DLC is pretty lackluster. I sort of thought that was very much just filler. But the base game is obviously phenomenal. I'm not even a superhero person, and I thought that was phenomenal. And then Miles Morales, I haven't played myself. I do plan on doing a Platinum video for it at some point, but I have heard that it is also very, very good. So definitely on the radar to do at some point. Crazy to think that these are both such high completion rates too. They're such friendly starting points for trophy hunters. We then have Mighty Number 9, which was kind of like a Mega Man clone of sorts that didn't really do well. I remember this not being as popular as they hoped it would be. Sub 1% ultra rare though, so that is very juicy. We then have Mortal Kombat 11, which is Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat 10's 100%, which is very nice to see, given that the servers have shut down on, what was the mode? Is it battle? Hold on, let me have a look at this one. Is it battle mode? Or like the tower mode is what I'm sort of thinking of. Yeah, Invasion Tower. That's what I was trying to describe. So unfortunately, you can no longer get 1,000 total hits during an invasion boss fight. You can't do the tower in general, and you can't win a 1v1 fight. All the DLC is obtainable though, so that's always nice to see. We then have Nier Automata, which is part of the Nier series. I think this is the second game. Nitro plus Blasters Heroines Infinite Duel is an interesting one here as well. I believe that these are more fighting games. Same with Odin Sphere. Oh, what is that? Odin Sphere Lefrasia? Is that how you pronounce that one, perhaps? We then have Outlast 100%, which is one that I'm actually looking at maybe doing myself this month. I really only have the insane mode left, which if you die, you go back to the start of the game. So Shuriken Sauce, do you let me know if this one is worth a crack? I love Outlast. I would be interested actually, mate, if you plan on doing Outlast 2 perhaps. I would definitely be interested, because I've run that a few times, and I don't have the Messiah trophy, but it's a tricky one. In my in my opinion, that is a very, very tricky trophy, but it is one where when I look at this list, I have zero doubts that you'll be able to smash it out in a couple of goes. We then have Outriders, which was another similar sort of thing to Destiny, a bit of a Borderlands cloney thing. I believe you and a team going to different like raids, I guess you would call them, kind of like Deep Rock Galactic. You get better loot, you can then upgrade your character that way. That's sort of the progression route. I think the game's actually fairly easy, but fairly sort of forgettable. But the DLC, I think there's one or two. Hold on, how many DLC packs do we have here? I know there's one. Okay, so they got 2 DLC packs. This is a game that I've been tempted to do myself at some point. Obviously, I haven't, but it is one that I'm tempted to try at some point. I do like my first-person shooters, so maybe I will give this a crack at some point in the future. We then get into some Resident Evils here with Resident Evil 2 and 7 both at 100%. Now, 2 only really has the one difficult trophy, which is No Way Out, I believe it was called. It was the one where you play as the police officer in the service station. You've got to kill 100 zombies, I think it was. The enemies and the item placement are all random, or item placement, loot drops are all heavily random. But it's tricky. It's one that I need to go back to and actually sit down and have an attempt at. We then have Resident Evil 7, which I did a video of on the channel, myself going for that platinum. I haven't tackled the DLC yet, which obviously you have, and I know that the DLC in this one is very, very beefy. You've got No Way Out. Ethan Must Die, which is the randomized run where you've got to get to Marguerite's house, I think it is. You've got all of the stuff with Joe. You've got the Chris Redfield DLC and the Blackjack one are all very, very difficult. But I know the one that I'm personally not looking forward to is the one where you're in the basement and you have to survive till morning. Yeah, definitely not looking forward to that one when I eventually go back and tackle that game. Or the DLC at the very least at some point. We then have Resogun, which I believe was a launch title with the PS4. This is kind of like a, what would I call it? It's like a shoot 'em up. You're essentially a little ship and you've got different shapes and stuff around you and you're shooting the shapes and getting high scores. It is, the servers have closed. There is 2 trophies you can no longer obtain, tragically. But I remember playing this a little bit like way back in like 2014, and it was a lot of fun. I'm definitely very impressed at seeing that 100%, and it's kind of nice to see that game again. I'm not entirely sure what Reyes Reese is, but it is a 0.58% platinum, which is another very, very nice one to see. We then get into Tomb Raider, Rise of the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, specifically Rise of the Shadow of the 2013 Tomb Raider. The middle game of the trilogy, probably the most average of the trilogy. It's got some tricky time attack stuff. It had this weird system where you had to do the time attacks, be able to pick cards that had negative impacts on yourself to get a better score. Why? It's do the time attack, sure. We can do that, but don't make it convoluted. It was kind of annoying as one I need to go back to myself at some point, but you've done a good job because there is a lot of DLC there. You've got the Croft Manor fighting glorified zombies. You've got the rescue mission one where you got to like rescue a bunch of dudes from like an oil refiner in the snow. Survival co-op is a treat. I've done that one myself. You and another player have to survive, was it 15 days, I think it was? Progressively the food gets more scarce and the enemies get harder. It was actually pretty unique a mode. I didn't mind that one. I know there is a solo version. I do have to do that at some point myself. We then have Rive at a 2.9%, and I think this is your first not completed game. And I'm going to point out the obvious. It's because you're currently working on it. It's the 10th of October was your most recent trophy, today being the 12th as of me recording this, or probably the 11th for anyone who's not Australian. Current one you're working on, and very impressive that I think this is the first game that isn't 100% so far. We then have Rocket League at 100%, Car Soccer, a lot of DLCs. Hence the 5 years and 8 months. We then have Skullgirl's second encore. This is another sub 1% platinum and an even less on the 100% there at 0.11, which is really cool to see. I didn't even know this game had DLC. Let's have a quick sticky beak. What do we have here? We have the Annie DLC and the Umbrella DLC. Okay. So Skullgirls is based on a Nickelodeon property, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm not mistaken there. I do know that it is a fighting game. Shocker. But I think I'm correct on that. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments below, mate. We then have some Soul Calibur here. You smashed out Soul Calibur 6 in less than 5 months, which is really, really cool to see. Is this the one with Geralt? Is Soul Calibur 6 the one with Geralt of Rivia in it? We then have Space Overlords with a 2% ultra rare. Smash that in a week. We then have Stormboy, which I think is our first, besides 36 Fragments of Midnight, this is our first easy peasy at 98% completion. Stormboy is a game set in Australia, in I believe Adelaide specifically, and it's one that I kind of want to do myself at some point. So do let me know. I'm not big on the easy peasies myself. Do let me know if there's actually some substance to that game, because I've always been curious about it, given that it's set in the country that I live in. We then have some Street Fighter with 4 and 5 here, both amazing completions, especially 4 with the speed that you went at. I am curious. I've noticed a theme, Shuriken Sauce, and you'll have to tell me if I'm correct. Do you go for fastest achiever and things? And the reason I ask, let's derail this really quick. Let's go back up to Marvel here. If I know how to spell, I would know that Marvel starts with M. Let's go into Marvel here. Let's go to the 100% club. Let's not go there because that's the wrong page. Here we go. Fastest achievers. You're in the top 5. Do you go for that? I am curious. And Downwell's another one that immediately comes to mind. I want to take a guess and say that you do enjoy a good fastest achievers completion rate there. Let me find where I was up to again. Oh yeah, Stormboy, easy peasy. Street Fighters, very impressive. Strider, we then have Surgeon Simulator with a 0.62. Your surgeon's hands. You're essentially this is your camera. Let's simulate the camera real quick. This is the camera. And that's essentially the platinum. I've summed that up to perfection. We then have Telltale's Tales from the Borderlands, which is kind of a fill in between. I believe it is Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3, based on events that I've heard. I actually haven't played the game myself because Telltale game. We then have Telling Lies, same sort of concept as a Telltale game. You're just playing through a bunch of scenarios, determining outcomes that'll then lead you onto different interactions with other different people. We then have The Complex, which I think is the same sort of deal again. But the next one's the one that's really impressing me. The Evil Within's 100%. Now, I've platinumed The Evil Within 2. And I've played The Evil Within 1. And maybe it's just my copy of the game. But it stutters like no one's business. It's very, very janky. I had a lot of glitches with The Evil Within 1. Namely, there's a few scenes where you got to kill certain enemies to open gates and stuff like that then just wouldn't open. And I've heard, obviously Akumu mode is extremely impressive. 3 weeks and 3 hours, that's juicy. I love to see it. I think you've done that actually around the same time Nick AR did The Within, which is interesting. I think he did in June as well. What is interesting to me though, is I know the DLC is very difficult, specifically, let me open it up, specifically the Save Head Dude DLC, which I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head. I think it is the Executioner. I think one of these trophies here, clear the Executioner without taking any damage. That's the trophy right there. I've got a box of steel. Is insane. I've heard horror stories about that one. I know the others have various different Kariyama modes, for example, is essentially Akumu mode, I believe. But I know that trophy there is particularly difficult, so I am super impressed by this one right here. And I would definitely say if you enjoyed The Evil Within, do the second game. It's easier. but it improves on a lot of components, in my opinion. We then have The Flame in the Flood, some Last of Us here with both Part 2 and the first time The Last of Us 1 was remastered, which includes all of the multiplayer and the various different multiple playthroughs that you've got to go through on Grounded and Grounded Plus, which is super, super impressive right there. The Shape-Shifting Detective is here. So what I'm learning, you love your fighting games, you love to speedrun a Platinum, and you really like your Telltale sort of games, I would recommend one to you. It's on PS Plus. One I really enjoyed that's similar to Telltale is called Last Stop. It's free on PS Plus Extra, I believe, and it is actually surprisingly really good. I would definitely say Shoryuken, give that one a crack at some point. I actually genuinely really liked it. But to go back to the topic, you have The Evil Within. Still impressed by The Evil Within. The Walking Dead right here, the first season, none of the rest of the seasons, interestingly. But the first one you've got here at 100%, including the DLC. We then have Ticket to Ride USA and France, some Titanfall, you smashed out the Gauntlet. I'm very jealous. I need to sit down and do the Gauntlet one day. I'm very, very lazy. Our second incomplete game here, which is another one that you're working on currently, which confirms my suspicion that you have a 100% account, which is amazing, is Torment Tides of Torment Tides of Numernia. And I clicked on it. I should have opened a tab. I was going to say, I'm curious as to what it is. It's an RPG, ultra rare RPG. Of course it's an ultra rare. It's Shoryuken's account. But we have an RPG by Techland. Oh, okay. So they're the people that made Dying Light, Dead Island, all those sorts of fun stuff. But that's a interesting one right now. Do let me know what that's like, because I am curious. I am a fan of Techland's stuff. We then have Trine and Trine 2, no Trine 3, however. Marvel vs. Capcom 3, massive platinum right there. Again, 4 days and 21 hours is crazy. You are very, very talented fighters, is what we've learned here. Ultimate Street Fighter 4, we've got Vanquish, which is a no, it's not, it's a third-person shooter that has some very hard challenges. Is it? Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't played Vanquish since like the PS3, but the one that was very, very difficult on it was Challenge 6. Was it Challenge 6? I think it was Challenge 6. And then to wrap out the list, we have Worms Battleground, which is a up to 4-player. What would I even describe it as? It's a party game. Essentially, you have teams of worms. Each round, you take turns trying to kill the other teams of worms. You have health bars, different weapons do different amounts of damage. The environment can kill you. It's a blast. I adore worms. Wasn't as big a fan of the most recent, like, Battle Royale sort of worms, but these older ones are classics. Now, I am curious. Let's go check out the stats for Shuriken Sauce, because this account is, quite frankly, amazing. Let's have a look here. We have 90 games. Our average completion is 31.99%, so I know this will get the Vigilant Crow seal of approval. We have a completion rate of 98.88%, but the 2 games that aren't complete, you are both working on as of 2 days from the recording of now, so I assume it's 100% account. We then have, obviously, the S-rank average. You can't... How can I... I'm not going to be able to do it, unfortunately, but you can see monthly activity was fairly low. Take my word for it, it increases in about mid-2019 and is fairly consistent for around about 150 trophies a month from that point onwards. And you can see trophies by time. This is going to be based on my time. So you're earning a lot of trophies around 7 p.m. my time Australian. Anyway, this has been an absolutely fantastic account, Shuriken Sauce. I really appreciated this account. I've also appreciated you assisting me with getting different names and stuff and genres and stuff of games correct in the comments of the Plat'n videos. Thank you so much for the help. Thank you so much for letting me look at this account. Once again, if you would like your own account looked at, do leave it in the comments below or join the Platinum Standard Discord. Link is in the description. Trophy hunting Discord made by trophy hunters, namely me, for trophy hunters. It's a good fun. It's a good place. And I'll catch you guys on next week's episode. I miss you already. Hugs and kisses. Goodbye.